Are the Ukrainians winning, or would you say not losing the war in Ukraine?
The situation on the battlefield is extremely difficult. The Russians are now pushing on many front lines, and of course the big offensive that the Ukrainians launched last summer didn't give the results we all hoped for. And we see how Russia is now building up, how they are acquiring drones from Iran, actually building their own drone factory to produce their own drones in Tatarstan with help from Iran, how they get ammunition and ballistic missiles from North Korea. And they have also demonstrated a high tolerance for casualties. So overall, Russia is pushing hard. And this is serious, and we should never underestimate Russia.
This is my video update on this Wednesday, midday, January the 17th. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with Davos, the Davos circus. So Ursula, she spoke at Davos, and she just basically ran through the greatest hits of Ukraine propaganda. Ursula von der Crazy, the Russian economy is in tatters. So she said that Russia is failing. That's what she said. Russia is failing. Actually, she started off her greatest hits list by telling everybody that she is going to give some real information. Now I'm going to give everybody some real information. You know that when a collective West world leader says, I'm going to give you some real information, that's when you know they're about to speak a whole lot of BS. That's for sure. Oh man. And then she said that the Russian military operation is failing. It is failing. She said that many of us feared that that Kiev would be taken in just a matter of days, but it was not, referencing the siege of Kiev. And then she said that Russia has lost roughly half of its military capabilities. Roughly half of its military capabilities. And Ukraine has driven Russia out of half the territories it captured. Which, if you're a collective West taxpayer, you don't have to give any more money to Elensky or to Project Ukraine. 50% of Russia's military capabilities, roughly 50% of Russia's military capabilities have been destroyed. That means that Ukraine can handle this all on their own. No more money to Elensky, right? No more money, no more weapons. That's it. Just let the Ukraine military roll over the remaining half of Russia's military capabilities. I like how she uses the word roughly. Maybe roughly 50%, maybe 50%. Could be 0.001% of Russia's military capabilities. I said roughly. Roughly could be 50%. It could be 0.001%. Oh man, Ursula von der Crazy, she did not disappoint. That's for sure. The only part that was missing from Ursula's speech was, I have to admit, was tatters. I was really hoping she would say washing machines and tatters. I was really hoping for that, but she didn't say that. And then we had Stoltenberg. Oh, Stoltenberg. So Stoltenberg was on this panel discussion. I believe Olaf Scholz was also on this panel. So this was a panel of of really bright collective West leaders. And I think it was the foreign minister of Norway, the ex-foreign minister of Norway, asks the ex-prime minister, was Stoltenberg prime minister of Norway at one point in time? Anyway, I think he had a very high government official, I believe prime minister. So you have one ex-Norway government official asking another ex-Norway government official about Project Ukraine. And I love the question that the ex-Norway official asks Stoltenberg. He asks, are the Ukrainians winning, or would you say not losing the war in Ukraine? Oh, man. Heads we win, tails you lose. I mean, oh, man. I'm still trying to process that question, to be quite honest. Maybe there's some deeper philosophical meaning to that question. Are the Ukrainians winning, or would you say not losing the war in Ukraine? I don't know. Maybe there's like some sort of deep Zen type of meaning to that question. I don't know. I don't know, man. Wow, what a question. And Stoltenberg's answer was just gibberish, blah blah, gibberish, jibber jabber. Stoltenberg didn't even answer the question. He couldn't even answer the question. He's like, we shouldn't underestimate Russia, and Russia's advancing on all fronts, and the situation is difficult, and we need to get more weapons to Ukraine, because the more weapons we get to Ukraine, the more peace we're going to have in the world, because more war equals more peace, and the Putin bad. And that was pretty much his answer to that question. He couldn't even answer the question. I'm just thinking, is that a question that can be answered? Is that a question that can even be answered? To be fair to Stoltenberg, can you even answer that question? Are the Ukrainians winning, or would you say not losing the war in Ukraine? What is the right answer? What is the right answer to that mystery of a question? Oh, Stoltenberg, the head of NATO. Stoltenberg, in his response, you can kind of tell in his panic. He's fidgety, and he's just not comfortable. You can tell that he understands that this war is over, that Ukraine and NATO, most importantly, that NATO has lost. But can you imagine Stoltenberg's fear to be the chief of NATO, and to understand that NATO's best proxy army, its most powerful military in Europe, was defeated by Russia 3 times, while Russia only used 10% of its military capabilities? Or, as Ursula says, roughly 50% of its military capabilities. Oh, man. So if Russia has lost 50%, roughly 50% of its military capabilities, why is Europe so worried about a Russia invasion? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. But, that's the WEF. That is the World Economic Forum, the circus known as the World Economic Forum. You had all kinds of other speakers during the first, I think this was the first day of the WEF circus. You had Pritzker, what's her name? Penny Pritzker, who's like the super duper billionaire of Hyatt hotel fame from Chicago, and she's been put in charge of Ukraine reconstruction. And she was telling the WEF that Ukraine has all kinds of natural resources, and also has cheap IT labor. So, she's saying like the quiet part out loud.
Then you add on top of it the world's richest soil that's capable of feeding the world, and inexpensive IT specialization.
Why do the globalists want to get their hands on Ukraine? Well, you have resources, farmland and other natural resources, while at the same time you have a whole bunch of cheap labor. So it's a globalist BlackRock Monsanto dream And then you had the Estonian, I think the Estonian president or prime minister, I forget. Not prime minister, because that would have been Kaja Kallas, so I guess Estonian president or foreign minister. And he was telling the WEF audience that they're trying to get the 300 billion. They're really trying to steal the 300 billion in Russian foreign assets, but they just can't figure it out. The famous tree of life, everybody, where all kinds of creatures reside. Yeah, so Estonia was like, we're trying to steal this money. We really are. But we just can't get our lawyers to figure out a way to steal this money. There was a historian moderating one of the panels, Timothy Snyder, and he was like, he's telling the people in attendance at the WEF that Ukraine doesn't only have to win. It's not good enough for Ukraine to win, but Russia must lose. And you can see like this evil smile on his face. You know, he's just thinking about Russia losing gets him very excited. He's like, Russia must lose.
And I can't help but think that the lesson that a country has to lose a war could be more clearly stated when we speak about the European Union. That is to say, it's not just that Ukraine has to win, it's that Russia has to lose. Those are both independently good things, I believe.
And then you had, of course, the star of the show, the star of the Clown World Circus, Elensky. Elensky rolled into Davos, and boy, did Elensky not disappoint. This was probably his best performance in his entire career. This was a great performance from Elensky. He wore his absolute best sweatshirt to the event. So he was dressed in his best sweatshirt and khaki brown fatigues and combat boots, and boy did he say some crazy stuff. We are talking some crazy stuff. Look, he asked for money, of course. He asked for money. He asked for weapons. He met with Blinken and he begged Blinken in the United States, please don't abandon me. He's like, please don't abandon me. And Blinken was like trying to assure Elensky, you know, the U.S., we're going to stand by your side. Don't worry. We're going to find you some money. Blinken's like, we're going to find you some money. Don't worry. We're not going to abandon Ukraine, and we're not going to abandon you, Volodymyr. Yeah, right. You know, Blinken's like, yeah, right. This guy's toast. That's what Blinken was saying to himself. He's like, this guy's toast. But man, and then Elensky, he actually threatened Putin's kids and grandchildren. That was interesting. That was really interesting. Elensky said during one of the interview sessions at the WEF, he said, Putin will not rest in peace, both in this world and in the next, neither his children nor his grandchildren. Elensky said the Russian leader is the sole reason why various wars and conflicts persist, and he must be held accountable so his aggression doesn't embolden other autocracies. Yes, we are not terrorists, and therefore these will be criminal trials after which Putin and his entire family would spend a long multi-year vacation behind bars. Yeah, that is what Elensky said about Putin. Not only will the Putin suffer, but also the Putin's children and grandchildren. Elensky also told all the people in attendance at the WEF, he said, strengthen Ukraine's economy and we will strengthen your security.
Managed to do that, so please strengthen our economy and we will strengthen your security.
Thank you so much.
Give me money and I give you security. This is good deal. You give me money, I buy many homes, and I will give you guys many security. And I will put the Putin and the Putin children and the Putin grandchildren behind the bars. This I promise you. Now give me money. What else did Elensky say? Boy, Elensky was he was on fire. Elensky was on fire. He blamed Russia for interfering in Africa. That was interesting. He was basically blaming everything on the Putin. He was blaming everything on the Putin. So yeah, that was Elensky. He did not disappoint. You know, go on to Twitter or Telegram and you will see some of Elensky's highlights from his appearance at the WEF, the World Economic Forum, which really should be renamed. It shouldn't be called the WEF. It shouldn't be called the World Economic Forum. It should be called the World Putin Lives in Our Head Rent-Free Forum, because the whole freaking thing is about Putin. The whole thing. But you know, everyone that was at the WEF, I have to be honest with everybody. From what I saw from the speeches and the interviews, when Elensky greeted Ursula, they met on the sidelines of the WEF, and Ursula's like, my friend. She's like, my friend, and Zelensky's like, my president? He called her my president. My president?
My friend.
President, again. Good to see you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you so much. How are you?
Oh, well, thank you.
Europe looks like they are panicking big time. And they should be panicking big time because they bet everything. They bet everything on Project Ukraine. And when Elensky goes to the WEF and he's so desperate, we're talking so freaking desperate, that he's threatening a world leader, and a world leader's, the president of Russia, nonetheless, threatening that person's children and grandchildren, that's when you know that Elensky has reached pretty much the bottom. I mean, he is at the end of the end of the end of the end of the line. And he was begging Blinken, please don't abandon us. Please. Like, please don't abandon us, Blinken. Please, please, please. It was pretty sad to watch in a way. You can tell that the globalists are in a panic. They are absolutely in a panic. They understand that if the U.S. pulls out, if the U.S. stops funding Project Ukraine, the whole thing's done. The whole thing's kaput. They understand that. Speaking of Putin, as the whole WEF circus was in town in Davos, Putin was in Russia. He was, I believe, in Moscow. He was speaking at an event called the Small Motherland event. And this event is basically where you get all the officials from all the various districts and regions in Russia, like all that. I think all the mayors and the city officials, and they all come to this event and they speak about the local issues that face Russia. And Putin, he said some interesting things at this event. First of all, you look at just the general appearance of the globalists in Davos, and you compare it with Putin's appearance and Putin's body language and demeanor, and you can see it as night and day. Like when you looked at Elensky, like sitting down for the one-on-one interview, like his body language just said defeat. His body language said defeat. He was very, very like closed up. The position of his legs. He looked like a child sitting in a booster seat. Very defeated. You could see from his body language, this was not a confident person. If you saw that person sitting down at a cafe, like ladies, if you saw Elensky sitting down at a cafe and you saw his body language, you would be like, this is not a confident guy. This is not a confident dude. And then you look at Putin, and he's open, he's taking up a lot of space. He's confident, he's calm, he's relaxed. Uh, Putin, you look at the way he was speaking, and you said, this guy is winning. This guy is winning big time. And he said some interesting stuff about Project Ukraine and just about the global situation in general. The meeting was about Russia and the local problems that Russian cities and towns face, and just talking about what's going on in Russia in general. But Putin did talk about the geopolitical situation, and what he did say was fascinating. He he had some fun too. He poked fun at the U.S. election system. He talked about $10 mail-in ballots, so that was pretty funny. Check out his quote. It was pretty funny what he said there. But he talked about the conflict in Ukraine. He said that the conflict started in 2008. He said this whole thing started in 2008 when NATO, they decided to open the doors to Ukraine and Georgia. And then he said that, there would be no conflict in Ukraine. This whole thing would have been over if the Elensky regime just did not listen to Boris Johnson. I mean, he said that. He's like, if they just told Boris to buzz off, if they didn't listen to Boris Johnson in March of 2022, yeah, March of 2022, he's like, this whole thing would have been over and done with. But they decided to listen to Boris Johnson. He also said that the big super duper spring summer counteroffensive that offends me and offends you and offends no one in this park because I'm the only one here. But he said that the super duper counteroffensive was a catastrophic failure. I wish Putin would start to use the word defeat, like what Alexander says. I think Alexander, in his videos, he has this one down. He has this one spot on when talking about the counteroffensive. The messaging really shouldn't be that it was a failure. And I make this mistake all the time as well. I say it was a failure. This was a Russian victory. Russia defeated NATO proxy in the counteroffensive. And that's the messaging that they should start using. Even Putin himself should start using the word defeat. We defeated NATO. We defeated Ukraine in the spring offensive. But he said it failed miserably. And then he said this. He said it failed so bad that Ukraine statehood could suffer an irreparable blow. That is what he said. That is a pretty big statement. That's hinting at something when he talks about Ukraine's statehood in jeopardy. Ukraine's statehood is in jeopardy because of the defeat they suffered in the counter-offensive. So that was a big statement from Putin. Putin also talked about Latvia. I thought this was interesting. He talked about Latvia and how the government of Latvia is expelling elderly Russians. And here is what he said, quote, in 2014, there was also a coup d'etat and the declaration of Russians in Ukraine as a non-titular nation. This was followed by a whole series of other decisions that nullified and actually led to what is now happening in Latvia and in other Baltic republics when Russian people are simply dumped across the border. You see, these are very serious things that directly affect the security of our country. It's almost like he's sending a warning to Latvia and the Baltic nations. Stop expelling Russians. Stop kicking Russian speakers, because these are, from what I understand, you're talking about elderly Latvian citizens, but he's like, stop kicking these people out of the country. They are Russian speakers who have been living in your country forever, I mean their whole lives, and now you're kicking them out. And that was a warning. He's like, don't let what happened in Ukraine happen to you. I thought that was an interesting statement. Now, of course, Putin may not be hinting at some sort of military intervention or anything like that. He could be hinting at Russia doing something else in order to deal with what they may be perceiving as some sort of discrimination, disenfranchisement of Russian speakers. So I thought that was a very interesting statement from Putin. What else? And then to pour salt in the wound of the collective West as they're having their WEF circus in Davos. Putin met with the foreign minister of North Korea in Moscow. So yeah, the timing of that was interesting, and no doubt the fact that the president of Russia decided to meet with the foreign minister of North Korea while at the same time this circus is taking place in Davos is sending a message. It is sending a message. You know that the collective West is going to be freaking out seeing Putin shake the hand of the foreign minister of North Korea. They are going to be absolutely freaking out. So that was the event that took place in Russia. I believe all of this went down in Moscow, the small motherland event. And you know, I think Putin's overall message, everything he was saying, at least with regards to geopolitics during this event, was that everything that is taking place now was preventable if the EU countries, the countries of Europe, just had sovereignty. If they were just sovereign nations and able to make their own sovereign decisions in their own best interest, all of this could have been prevented. You also had the EU Parliament. They were debating various things, and this turned into an interesting session at the EU Parliament. They were debating Project Ukraine. They were debating everything that's going on in Israel, the war in Israel and in Gaza, and boy, were some very, very strong statements and interesting speeches were given at this EU Parliament session. Claire Daly, she did not disappoint. She gave a speech about the war in Israel and in Gaza, and she called Biden Butcher Biden. That's what she called him, Butcher Biden. She once again referenced Ursula von der Leyen as Frau Genocide, and she said that Germany was genocidal Germany in her speech. She also said that Ireland disowns Biden. She's like, you know, Biden, you always talk about how you're from Ireland and how you have Irish ancestry. She's like, you know what? Stop saying you're from Ireland. Ireland does not want anything to do with you. We disown you. That was quite a statement from Claire Daly. And then you had the Estonian MEP. Now this guy, he gave a speech talking about how 800,000 Ukraine migrants, asylum seekers, refugees, whatever, came to the EU. 800,000 of them. And he's like, look, we have 800,000 Ukrainians in Europe. He said they're here illegally. They're in the EU illegally, and they should go back to Ukraine and be sent to the front lines. He actually said that. He's like, we should send all of these military-aged men back to Kiev. We should help Elensky to get these people back to Kiev. He actually called them cowards. That's the word he used. He said that they're illegally in the European Union, and these cowards need to go back to Kiev. Those are some good friends of the Ukrainian people, the Estonian political class, huh? Really good friends there. An unbelievable statement from this Estonian MEP. An unbelievable statement. I was kind of shocked when I listened to his speech. You had a Slovakia parliament member give a speech talking about how the globalists, for lack of a better word, let's say the globalists need to stop killing Slavs. He said that. Where is his speech? Miroslav Radakovsky, MEP from Slovakia. He said, we need to stop supporting the killing of Slavs. Because if we don't, we Slavs might unite as brothers, and I believe that we will, and raise Western Europe to the ground, to the La Mancha alone. And I believe no one here wants that to happen. Interesting speech from Miroslav Radakowski. And you also had a German parliament member, Zimniok, talk about Gonzalo Lira. Rest in peace. He said that an investigation needs to happen as to the murder of Gonzalo Lira at the hands of the Elensky regime. He demanded an immediate end to any support for this corrupt state in reference to Ukraine. So a lot of interesting statements from the Parliament of the European Union. The speech from the Slovakian MEP, that was an interesting speech. And you know, he's kind of correct. He's kind of correct. I think one of the underlying narratives or themes or one of the underlying things that's playing out with this conflict in Ukraine, and it has been playing out for many, many decades, is how the collective West is always trying to pit Slav nation against Slav nation, whether it's Orthodox Slav against Catholic Slav, whether it's collective West Slav nation against an East Slav nation. It seems like this is something that the powers that be in the globalist class, it seems like this is one of their overall plans, which is to always have the Slavs fighting each other for various reasons. And so he's right, this parliament member of Slovakia. Maybe it is time for the Slav nations to realize what's going on, understand what's going on, and to stop being led by these globalists to your own demise. An interesting speech from the Slovakian parliament member. And sticking with Slovakia, we had the Prime Minister of Slovakia, Mr. Fico, meeting with Orbán. So while all of the circus, once again, the circus is in town in Davos, and what does Fico do? He travels to Budapest to meet with Orbán. And basically what Fico said is that we support you, Hungary. We support you. We are by your side. We support your veto of the 50 billion to the Elensky regime. And you've got a friend here. You've got an ally, you've got a friend, and the endless money, the unaccounted for, unaudited endless money and weapons to Ukraine has to stop because it's not working. That is what Fico said. Let me get you his quote. Here we go. You thought that if you gave Ukraine billions of money and weapons, Ukraine would bring a wounded Russian bear on a plate. It's not going to happen. It will never happen. Slovak Prime Minister Fico said, the Russian economy is working. The ruble remains stable. Russia is becoming more self-sufficient. Russian energy companies are informing new record agreements to export energy to countries like China and India. That was what Fico told the press during a conference that they held, Fico and Orbán. I love the line that he uses. Ukraine would bring a wounded Russian bear on a plate. It's not going to happen. It will never happen. That's a pretty powerful statement from Fico. So you have Slovakia now and Hungary. Those are the two countries that are going to be working together to prevent 50 billion from going to the Elensky regime. An unaudited, at least let's say an unaudited, unaccounted for 50 billion to go to the Elensky regime, and they're going to be working together to try and bring an end to this conflict because they understand, Fico and Orban, they understand that the collective West has lost. They lost, it's that simple. They lost this conflict, and it's time for them to get out of this mess. You know, Poland could have been part of this alliance if law and justice was just put aside their hatred of Russia. This goes back to the Slovakian MEP and what he said about Slavs being pitted, facing off against Slavs. If Poland would have just stopped hating Russia just for 5 seconds, then they would have realized that Orban was right. They would have stopped the escalation in Ukraine, and it would have been Slovakia, Hungary, and Poland aligned to bring an end to this conflict. But law and justice, they chose poorly, and they got booted out of office by Tusk and the European Union, and there you have it. So let's do a couple of more stories. How are we doing on time here? Oh, I don't think I have time for a couple more stories before Clown World begins. Let's see here. South Africa, they said they're going to bring a case against the US and the UK to the ICJ for complicity of genocide in Israel. That's an interesting story. Vivek was with Trump the other day, and Vivek is going to be working with the Trump campaign going forward. Also an interesting story. And let's get to some clown worlds. So we have this cover from The Economist with the title, "A New Therapy for Ukraine's Scarred Soldiers." Ketamine, psychedelics can help them to overcome trauma and possibility to fight. An interesting article from The Economist. Psychedelics to help the Ukrainian soldiers be annihilated by the Russian military. Good job, neocon economist. Real good job there. They're just saying it out loud now. I really wish the people in Ukraine would just look at these articles, guys. Look at these articles. They're saying it out loud. And then you have this video from the meeting between Blinken and Elensky. And it's a video of Blinken sitting with Elensky, and they're discussing whatever they're discussing. Elensky's begging Blinken to not abandon him. And then the video shows a banner, a sign from the Davos event. And take a look at what the sign says. Just read that sign for a second. Now, I don't know if this is photoshopped. Maybe it's photoshopped. Maybe it isn't, but it doesn't look photoshopped. But I don't know. Maybe it is Photoshop. Maybe this is a Photoshop. Could you make such a big mistake on a banner? I'm not sure. But anyway, it must be Photoshopped, man. That must be Photoshopped. Anyway, that's the video, everybody. I feel like this whole video is a clown world. Anyway, that's the video, theduran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and Twitter X, and go to the Duran shop. Use the code, use no code, 15% off all t-shirts. Take care.